This is Eat, Sleep, Invest, the marketing podcast for real estate investors to get more deals. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Eat, Sleep, and Invest. I'm your host, Bryan Driscoll. I'm here with Al Nicoletti, and we're going to talk about some probate today. What's going on, Al?
Brian, let's go. How you doing today?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
You know, we're making it happen. The market's on fire and there's always probates around. So got plenty to tell you on that stuff.
Nice. So, hey, well, let's even start at the beginning. For people that don't know what probate is, give us like the short version.
The real version when it comes to real estate is somebody owned that property, a piece of property. And when they own the property, it's in their name, and it can also be in a single member LLC, no operating agreement, but it's in their name, and they die. There's heirs somewhere around, right? There's usually a spouse, there's kids, no kids, parents, brothers, sisters. There are heirs around. And in order for them to get title to the property, sell the property, refinance on the property, they're going to have to go through a process called probate. And what probate is the court process, taking the title of what that person had and moving it to the heirs. So it's a transfer of title system right to the heirs. So now they can sell, convey, refinance on the property. And if you're trying to buy it, Brian, now you'll get title insurance because probate is done. And that's really the bottom line process.
Okay, cool. So anytime someone's trying to buy a property from someone deceased, it has to go into court, and then the court passes it to the heir, then you can purchase it pretty much, right?
Then you can purchase it, get title insurance. Yeah.
All right, cool. And you know what? We actually skipped. Tell everybody a little bit about you.
Wow. So music major, went to University of Miami, was doing music for 15 years. I realized that wasn't really going to take me to the next level, make a whole lot of money. So all of a sudden I went into law and I went to law school. I had no idea what I was going to do or what I wanted to practice. But I ended up getting a job right out of school with the real estate firm, old mentor of mine, and we were doing foreclosure defense. So when I first got out of school, we were really focusing on foreclosures and all that whole world in real estate. And it was really interesting. And then all of a sudden, really found my world in the world of probate when I moved up to Jacksonville. This is really condensed. There's a crazy story about how it all like got deep and involved. But, fast forward like 3 to 4 years after living in Jacksonville and just speaking and talking and connecting with so many people and talking about probate and educating, it's really taken off and elevated. And, not only am I just now lawyer, I'm podcaster, content creator, marketer, influencer. So the shift of having just gotten out of school and been with the firm to now is just dramatic. So it's been a wild ride. The story goes really deep.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that is a lot of stuff. And it's interesting because you kind of specialize in probate with real estate investors, right?
Correct.
Which is kind of rare because a lot of attorneys I talk to, like they deal with business or they deal with real estate, like real estate in general. It's very rare to find somebody that actually specializes in real estate investors doing specific things, which is awesome because you're going to be really good at it. Like if somebody has that problem, you're the guy to come to.
Right. And a lot of investors come across all these problems in real estate deals where it's sticky or they need to go through probate or there's something wrong with the legal description. And there are so many little things that can go wrong with that deal. Everybody's so excited about going under contract, right? Like that's the ultimate, right? Like everybody talks about how do you market to the seller? How do you get there? How do you do this? But even when you get to that next level, what happens when you bring it to title and say, hey, great job on your marketing. Great job going under contract. Wait a second. You got a title problem. Legal description, 6 probates, quiet title. You got so many other things going on. And you're like, what do we do? So that's where my world is. I'm that last hurdle before they get to closing and they're able to close the deal. So it can be a big hurdle too.
Right. Yeah. It could blow a deal sometimes, right?
Yeah, it can.
Yeah,
it can't because I was on a Zoom the other day, and one of the things I've been really structuring and explaining is, with any probate or any real title issue, there's a problem, right? So how you have a problem, what's the solution? And there's going to be a solution to the problem. There's going to be a solution, and if you can figure out what the solution is with the right team around you, only then the next question is how much. right? And does the deal make sense? Is there enough room in the deal? And if the answer to that is no, then okay, everybody, goes and walks away because it's got to make sense for everybody. But you got to walk into these deals with that solution-based mindset. And that's what I've learned to mold my mind to. And I've learned to educate and explain to people, because everyone thinks there's that problem. Well, how do you get to that solution?
That makes sense. So let's talk about some of these problems, because some people might not even know that there's solutions for these problems. So what are some types of problems that investors, when they're dealing with the deal and this pops up, it's like, boom, okay, I know at least the direction and it's solvable.
Timing. Let's start there. So, if I was in an audience, and maybe you'll do it, Bryan, like, how many people think that probate takes 6 months, 9 months, 2 years? And anytime I do that, everybody's hands go up, because for the longest time, anybody that's picked up a deal that's in probate, oh, it's taking forever. So timing has always been a problem with probate. Waiting. So a lot of lawyers don't do it, but a lot of attorneys want payment up front. So investors run into situations where if they need to do the probate or they need to get that title issue resolved, lawyers want the money up front. So nobody wants to take a risk and pay $10,000 up front with no guarantee that the problem is going to get solved, right? So timing, money, communication. Communication's been another problem with heirs, because people can be trained to say too many complicated things to sellers, and that messes up the whole deal. Like when you explain too much, or you want to like open up the book or open up Google and start explaining like what you know about probate based on that book and stuff. It's like, you got to know where to go in those situations. So the communication's always been a problem, and being able to break things down easily with heirs. Also, systems and processes and the people you go to, the network you go to. If you don't have that network already built out, whether it's probate attorney, whether it's a title, whether it's a lender, whether it's anybody that's trying to help you fund the deal, if you don't have those pieces in place, then that's going to muddy up your deal as well. So it's, the probate word is no different, Bryan, than a transaction where there's 5 sellers, right? It's just the P word that gets involved, and it gets everybody like crazy about, wait a second, we got to like do something totally different here. It's no different, because you still got multiple sellers, just like you would if they were all alive. So those are the things that get in the way of deals, and buyers, hedge funds don't want to wait that long. Buyers don't want to wait that long for a deal. So timing, money, communication, systems and processes, all the things that you would think of are like, well, that's basic. It comes up so much. And that's where I've been able to really retool that to find those solutions.
So say because you just deal in Florida, right?
Correct. I'm only in Florida.
Okay, so say I'm up here in Pittsburgh, but if say I'm in Florida, I find a property, it's under probate. I'm like, hey, Al, I don't know what to do here. This is gonna take me 9 months, 12 months to get through it. Like, I come to you. How long can you, on average? I know you can't really say, it depends on every situation, but like, what could people expect in a realistic timeline? They come to somebody that knows what they're doing on probate, and what would that process look like?
So again, like you said, it was like, it always depends on the counties too, right? So right now things are moving pretty quickly in Jacksonville. If you find a deal, you're talking about 2 to 6 weeks maybe. And if you're in Jacksonville, straightforward, 4 kids ever, everybody's on board, right? Like that's the key to that. Everybody's in agreement to do the deal. So you're looking at a matter of a couple weeks in Jacksonville. If you find yourself in Orlando, you could be looking at probably about 2 months, 3 months, because there's a lot of things going on in Orlando right now. Some things are backed up and just different systems are happening. But then you head over to Tampa, and Tampa could be like 3 to 6 weeks, right? Or maybe a small county like Clay County could be about a matter of 2 to 6 weeks. So not only depending on the county or the city you're in, but you have to see that this is taking a lot. The process is a lot quicker than 6 months and 12 months. You could do these things quickly, but you also got to know your county as well and ask the people. If you ask me like, hey, Al, what if we go to Suwannee? What's Suwannee like? Well, I tell you, Bryan, I haven't been to Suwannee in 3 years. I don't even know if it's like, 6 months or 2 months, but here's my thing. We're going to find out. We're going to see what we can do and find out more information.
Yeah. So now, how do people even know? So say we go meet with a seller, like, hey, yeah, my parents passed away. We're all on board. We get it under contract. At what point do people find out, hey, wait a minute, this is in probate, we need to get someone involved? Is that when it goes to title and they run title, like before we're closing? Like, or can they find out, like, what's the timeline there?
So 3 ways they could potentially find out like there needs to be a probate. One, when they talk to the seller and they find out little tidbits about like mom owned the house, dad owned the house. Well, what do you mean they owned it? Like what's going on? Well, we've been paying the taxes for the last 10 years and we're tired of paying the taxes and tired of getting Bryan's letter about we want to buy your house. We're tired of getting the contractor to come over to fix the roof. So there's times when they're just over their situation and it's been 10 years, 5 years, and they want to sell, but mom owned the property. Mom died. Now they want to get rid of it. So you can hear those little red flags that go up even before you get to title. The second way is Bryan goes under contract with the beneficiary. Nobody beneficiary thinks, oh, mom died, I automatically get the house, right? Like they don't even think about probate. They think that inheritance happens naturally. So then you go to title and the title underwriter says, hold on a second. Just when you thought you didn't need probate or you just thought automatically the title transfers over, there's going to have to be 3 probates. And you're thinking, why? Wait, why 3 probates? So title underwriter does a deep dive and finds out before mom, they never did a probate for grandma. And so there needs to be a probate from grandma to mom and then from mom to son. But now does the tree get all messed up because now you got to go back to grandma? So title is a very useful way of doing a deep dive to making sure you're not wasting your time and efforts and that you get everything you need to close the deal. Because ultimately, that's one of the things that makes me different, Bryan, is I don't look at a probate as a probate. I look at a probate as a start to finish ending. How are you going to close the deal, right? If you don't think about the close, you're wasting your time because it's not always about the start, right? Everybody's thinking to start the next step. No, I'm thinking about how is this thing going to close? So the vision of it is that. And so that's title, right? That's the title world. Or you could find stuff like on lead lists that it's never gone through probate or pre-probate. But the other way is sometimes the property appraisers change the designation of the probate if maybe a death certificate has been recorded on the property. So somebody owned it and maybe the death certificate just changes it. So those are different ways it could be a probate, a pre-probate, maybe an inheritance lead. But that's why you ask questions. Asking questions about what's happening, who owns it, doing some due diligence and checking the deeds and checking the property appraiser, not just assuming these are the right people, finding out what's really going on the ground level, literally meeting on the deed.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, does a will have anything to do? Can that change it? Do people, like, all properties don't go to probate, or do they? And how about a will? Does that change anything?
Boy, that's a great question. So in Florida, wills do not avoid probate. So a lot of sellers think, oh, mom left the will, and then Bryan's coming along and saying, whoa, have you gone through probate? And they're thinking, no, we haven't. And you're like, well, I talked to Al and Al's like, you got to go through probate, even if there's a will. And the seller goes, no. You see where it says I can sell the property with or without court order. And it's like, look, I get it. But here's the thing. That will is not a will. It's a will, but it's not admitted yet. It hasn't been examined yet by the judge. So in Florida, the wills still have to go through a process of being examined and looked at. So even if a seller tells you that and they've never gone through probate, wills do not avoid probate. So, there's so much to talk about on that end. What was that second question?
I forget. I was thinking.
It was a great question. It was a great question.
I was asking about wills, and then I forget. We'll come back to it because I was sitting there thinking on wills too that everyone needs to check their states too. Like it's like Pennsylvania might be something different, all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, those are basic things that a lot of investors can do themselves a favor on. And like, I was on a call the other day about, hey, Al, like we heard your whole podcast. We were like blown away. Like, how do we find you in another state? And I'm like, it's hard. It's tricky. Like there's not 50 Al Nicolettis. Like I know Rylas Dana is in Arizona. I know another guy that's in South Carolina, but like finding the right people that understand this stuff in other states is really tricky. And they want to know like, how do you find those kinds of people in other states? And it was a great question. And I thought, how do you find it? You find it because they're working with the same kind of people as well. You know, when you're going to the attorney and saying, hey, what's the percentage of investors or real estate professionals you work with? They're going to say 60%. Yeah, that's a good number. I'd say 80% probably is the number you're looking for. 90%. That means that they have creative ideas and creative solutions in their head. But we can go down that road, Bryan, for sure.
Yeah. Now also, so you were talking about before, like if there's multiple heirs, things like that. So if they get along, you're good. If they don't get along, I know you probably have some stories, because a lot of times that happens. Like there's someone that passed away, a loved one. A lot of families don't get along. You know what I mean? A lot of people. So what are some things that people should be looking at there?
So
not even looking for, like, how do you deal with it?
Yeah. So I got two stories. I got the one where there were 6 beneficiaries, and then I have another one right now where the investor bought out a third interest. So I'll tell you both stories. So the first story is mom dies. There's 6 kids ever. And the investor came across this deal. I don't even know if it was a direct mail or cold call or what kind of list it was, but he came across it and he reached out to one of them. And he said, you know, I'm interested in buying your property. You know, are you interested in selling? And they were all like, yes, we're ready. And he's like, we are ready. He's like, they're like, there's 6 of us and 5 of us are ready. So he goes, oh, okay, we'll send the contract over. So he sends the contract over and he gets a contract of the 5 of them. He's still missing 1. So he said, well, where's the 6th one? They're like, oh, he's not really on board. And the investor's like, what do you mean he's not on board? And they're like, well, you can go call him, go find out, or we'll talk to him and see if he wants to sell. They talk to him and he's not interested. He doesn't want to sell. So investor comes back to me and they're like, Al, you know, what do? We can't buy 100%. We need all 6. What are the options? So 2 things are rolling through my head. The first option is you do the probate, moving the title to all 6, right? And then the second concept is partition, where 1 or more want to sell and 1 or more do not want to sell. And the ones that want to sell can file a lawsuit, go to a lawyer, and force the sale to auction or private listing or a private sale. So in my head, I'm thinking, oh, okay, that's an option. And they said, like, give us some time. We'll try to get number 6 on board. They call a week later and they said, we can't get number 6 on board. And I said, let me look at my notes. So I looked at my notes and I didn't see anything that I wrote down. I'm really good about taking notes contemporaneously with the conversation. Like if you called me, Bryan, and you're like, Al, I got a situation, like Bryan, I'd be like, hold on. All right. I'm going to read it out loud. So I looked in my notes and my notes did not say anything about homestead. And in Florida, when property is homestead of the deceased, title moves to all heirs, meaning you definitely need all on contract, or you're doing that partition thing if you don't have them on board. So I said, can we get the lady on the phone? We get the lady on the phone. I said, ma'am, I have a question for you. Did mom live and reside in that property? And she said, no, she moved out. I said, okay, so you're telling me she moved out of that property before she died? They're like, yes. I said, she never intended to come back because that's an element of homestead. She said, no, she never wanted to come back. I said, bingo. Said, I have a way where we don't need him on that contract. I have a way we can totally get around him and get that property sold 100%. She was like, oh, really? I said, I got it. I'm like, there's an affidavit you're going to have to sign. Are you ready to sign that? She said, not only me, but my sisters also are ready to sign it. I was like, perfect. So the investor's like, what's the next step? I said, she's going to get with brother and let him know that they're going to get around him. Next day, investor calls and says, Al, you're never going to believe it. He signed the addendum. I was like, really? He said, yeah, I guess he got the memo that they were going to go around him and he had no other choice. So they pinned him down and it was a checkmate. So learning these strategies and these solutions to the deal helped bring that deal to the table where they all could sign the contract, lowered the cost substantially. And now the investor is going to move to closing. So that was a problem. We found a solution. We were able to apply it and we brought him to the table.
Yeah, you know what? That's a really good story too, because that stuff happens all the time. Someone just out of spite, someone grew up in the house, they're sentimental. They're like, I'm not ready yet. We can't sell. They just want to hold it forever. So yeah, that's important stuff there.
Yeah. And we've seen ones where investor found a piece of property. There's 3 people on title and 2 of the people were dead. And he knew where the one guy that was alive, where he was. So investor goes to talk to the guy and says, hey, do you want to sell? Guy says, yeah, I want to sell. And then investor's like, well, what about the other 2 people? They're dead. Where are their heirs? So the investor goes, he looks up the death certificate, does some skip tracing, and he finds the heirs. Investor goes to the heirs and says, hey, I'm interested in buying. Do you want to sell? And they were like, I don't know. We have to talk to each other. Investor's like, okay, like, well, if you want to sell, you're going to have to do probate because 2 other people are deceased on title. And they're like, oh, no, we don't have to do any probate. We don't have to do anything. And so there was like a clash over whether probate had to happen or if they wanted to sell. So the investor was like, you know what? Let me go back to the first one that was alive. And ARV on the property is like $50,000 to $60,000. So the one guy that was alive, he just wanted to get rid of it. So investor was like, hey, I'll tell you what, I'll buy your 1/3 interest out and I'll deal with them potentially later. The guy was like, really? Investor buys out that deed for like $800. Now he controls a 1/3 interest against the other 2 estates and now can choose to either wait to an auction to collect the surplus or do a partition and try to collect his net seller proceeds at the end. Big point. There was a problem. There was a solution to a profit or a way to get around that whole system. And you buy, I mean, what's the risk on that? $800 to potentially make $15K. I mean, that's insane. So we see these weird things all the time in different scenarios about what can you do? What happens if they don't agree? Ideally, like you said, you want everybody.
Yeah. So there's so many different situations too. So anyone listening, like anyone who's doing this, you're either spending time or money anyhow. Spend the money, find your Al in the area, or if you're in Florida, hit up Al. And they're gonna reduce your time spent. They're gonna let you close quickly, and just make everything happy. So find these guys, find the Al that can help you in all these situations, because every situation is going to be different. Like you need somebody with the experience that can think outside the box and be like, okay, here's the problem. Let me think what we can do to resolve it and find win-wins for people.
Yeah.
And now time's running short, but I have another question too. So whenever people find these places and say that situation, there's one alive and then the 2 people inherited, what if they couldn't find them? Like, what kind of strategies do you have there? Like, what do you see? It's like, okay, there's someone here. We need them on board and we don't know who they are or how to find them.
Yeah. Like I said, there's so many stories that are going through my head. Eventually I'm putting together like a whole catalog of like, I'm just going to put a black magic right in front of me and just start recording. I think that's the way to do it. So we capture all this content. So 2 things are going through my head. So like the guy that just picked up the 1/3 interest, imagine he doesn't know who they are, right? That has no idea, doesn't want to deal with the probates, just wants to force the sale and get his 1/3 interest. In Florida, you can partition and force the sale of those estates, and you would get an investigator to try to find out who they are, serve whoever they are, run a newspaper publication, and then eventually collect your 1/3 net seller proceeds or net proceeds at the sale, right? So on a partition level, that's what could happen. On a probate level, this was the wild story where investor lives in an area and goes goes to work every day. And when you were living in your neighborhood as a kid, there was always that one house that everybody knew, like something sketchy was going on. There's something weird's happening. So investor like kept driving by the house, and eventually one day was like, driving for dollars, literally like on your way to work, try to do some digging into the property. Come to find out there was a lady that owned it and she died. So he was thinking, well, I know exactly where I'm going to go to ask these questions. So investor calls me and he's like, what's the next step? And I said, well, you got to try to find the death certificate. On the death certificate, you can see if there's like an informant, somebody filled it out. So maybe there's like a next level of who to go to. And let's try that. So he pulls the death certificate. He finds some name, but it's not anybody like either related or somebody that filled it out somewhere else. And he goes, I can't find anybody. I can't find anybody. I said, I got someone for you, genealogist. So I know one of the top probate genealogists in the country. And so I had him reach out to the genealogist and I said, you got to give him the death certificate. You got to give him what you got. So genealogist does his report. It comes back where the lady had no heirs, right? Zero. They did the whole probate Macarena. I have a whole thing in all the presentations about, spouse, you go down, you go up, you go out, you go down, you go up, you go out. He did the whole Macarena and he found nobody. So investor was like, oh, good. Like, what do we do? Maybe it goes to the state. And the genealogist is like, well, here's the problem. That lady had a predeceased spouse. So in Florida, the statute says you go back down his line. So when the genealogist went down his line, they ended up finding out that there were 5 nieces and nephews, and all of them are alive. None of them knew that there was a piece of property that they could be inheriting. And you know how this story goes, right? They had no idea. Now they want the top dollar for it. How that whole thing goes. So investor was like, what's next? And it's reach out to them, find out what they want, what they want to do. And since then, he's been reaching out to them, trying to get them on contract, and they're trying to work something out. But the moral of the story is, what do you do in that sense? You work with these right people. There are people out there that know people that can help put you in touch with those people to help solve the problem and get to that solution, because there's going to be a solution, but that you can believe is not an inexpensive thing to do.
Yeah. And you know what, too? You're right. It's your circle. Work with the right people because they know the right people. Me, I didn't even know genealogist was a thing, let alone in a situation like that could get you a deal. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, boom. And that could get you a lot of deals, because if you figure something out like that and most of the people in your area don't, you can specifically target types of deals and figure them out and get them when no one else can, because they don't know how.
Right. We have one right now. There's no heirs, no predeceased spouse either. Zero. So we're about to try to sell that property to the state of Florida.
Okay. That's crazy. All right. Well, hey, Al, so if people want to reach out to you, how do they connect with you?
Best way to connect, social media is huge. Facebook, find me there. Instagram, I have my @attorney Nicoletti. I'm on YouTube. I have tons of videos that I'm posting all the time on Walk and Talks, Hot Topics, and my Al Nicoletti Show, which is on iTunes and Spotify. If you got to reach me, it's 904-999-0053, www.alnicoletti.com.
Okay, perfect. And we'll put all those in the show notes too. So anyone, if you want to reach out to Al, just look at the show notes. Everything's down there. And is there anything else we missed, or do we pretty much cover everything from a high level?
The one thing I think I remembered you asked was, how do you know a property is in probate, or how do you know that there has to be something with that property in probate? Yeah. So like, how many people look through court records, right? Like the one thing that people think about is, oh, let's go to the court files and pull all the court records. Not every probate has real estate. So, you may find situations where you're trying to look through the records to pull probates, and you're like, every one of these has real estate. Not everyone has real estate. And then the other thing is, not every property has to go through probate, right? There's sometimes magic language on the deeds, or trusts don't have to go through probate, or certain types of ways that property is titled. So like Bryan was saying, like, you got to get in touch with the right people that'll connect you with the right people to help get you to that next level, to see what do you got to do. Connect with the right attorneys, the right title companies, the right lenders, the right investors, and surround yourself with the right community so you know what's going on and how to tackle it.
That's huge, man. All right, everyone. Hey, thanks for listening. Al, thanks for coming on the show. And everyone go out there and crush it and close some more deals.
Thank you, Bryan. I loved it. Thank you, everybody.